I'm back with some old gen Madden 23 gameplay for you guys. So if you play on the PS4, the Xbox One, or PC, you'll get an idea of what the gameplay is looking like for Madden 23. Now later on tonight, I'm going to be doing a full side-by-side breakdown of Madden 23 on old gen versus new gen, so if you're interested in that video, make sure you're subbed up with the bell icon on so you don't miss that video when it drops. Now much like last year, in terms of gameplay for old gen Madden, it's basically the same as it's been for the past couple of years. That's the one main area of the game that is no longer really being updated on the older consoles, as Max Crosby comes in off the edge with a nice sack on Russell Wilson here. Now when it comes to a lot of the other things that have been brought to the game this year, a good bit of those will be on the older generations and PC, and like I said, I will cover all of that tonight, so it's not a complete copy and paste game if that's what you were thinking, but in terms of gameplay, it pretty much is. But we've kind of known that because ever since Madden 21 Next Gen, they redid the player movement for the new consoles, and they made it pretty clear that that was going to be one of the main focuses going forward on the newer systems, was that they were making the player movement more realistic. It's an entirely new system. Now, of course, you can argue that the player movement could still be a lot more realistic, because that's true, but when compared to the old consoles, it's night and day in how it looks and, more importantly, how it feels. You can't really stop and go, cut on a dime as easily, you can't move as fast, it's a little more slowed down and a little more accurate to real life. The way they run routes is a little more accurate as well, whereas on the old systems, it's a lot more of just very hard cuts and straight lines. On the new consoles, much like real life, on certain routes, they kind of round the routes off or they drift a little bit, which makes it have a little bit more of a realistic feel. Now, there are actually a few things that relate to gameplay that are the same on both generations and not only exclusive to the new consoles. One of those being the abilities and the X factors. They added some new ones, they changed some around, and they removed Escape Artist as an ability because it was just kind of getting a little too overpowered. All of that stuff is also present on the older consoles, so you won't have Escape Artist as regular abilities anymore. Some of the players have new abilities, some of the players have switched abilities around, certain players are X Factors who were not X Factors last year. All of that stuff, which does heavily affect gameplay, is the same on both consoles. As we got a completely nasty touchdown here on the run with Derek Carr, but that's really right there kind of an example of something that is a little bit different on the new consoles. It's not as easy to throw on the run, it's not as easy to break the pocket, it's not as easy to be accurate on the run, and the zones usually defend those crossing routes a little bit better than they had in some of the past games, especially on old gen. So pretty much any gameplay related type issue that you might have had with the game on old gen is more than likely going to still be there. But also, as it pertains to gameplay, there's been playbook updates. Every team has more team specific plays that they run in real life. Those have also been added on the old gen as well. So the main thing that you're just not getting with old gen is stuff like field sense, which includes the new passing system, which, I mean, a lot of people are saying they didn't even want to use it anyway. So I guess it depends on the type of player you are. I personally think if you kind of practice it, it's actually a very useful system, but in no way is something you absolutely need. You're also not going to get some of the updated tackle animations. You're not going to get the drift logic for zones, which I think is actually a big deal because that's what helps them defend some of the routes that they've just historically struggled to defend. They have a much better chance of defending them now. They do a better job, not perfect, but much better than what we have been dealing with. Those are really the main gameplay differences, and just the fact that the movement, which has been kind of a thing for years now, is going to still be the same on old gen. As we try to throw it up, we try to give Devontae a chance there, and now we get picked off by Justin Simmons, one of the best safeties in the league. So that was just kind of a dumb pass by me. But, you know, on the new consoles, that's an example of something that is different. The one-on-ones are a little easier to win on the new consoles. Actually, I think receivers are winning one-on-ones pretty often on the new consoles, and a lot of people like that. Now, some people don't like it. I guess it just always depends on which side of the community you fall on, but that is kind of one of the noticeable gameplay differences, is that you can win those 50-50 balls with a good receiver more often. And of course, things like the game day momentum and the home field advantage, things like that were added last year, those are not coming to old gen either, and I don't think they ever intended it to. Honestly, I don't know if the old gen could even handle the momentum and home field advantage, because I know a few years back when they added the abilities to the game for the first time, they had to remove some things on the field because it was causing lagging, because I guess as you get near the console's life, you do start getting a little strapped for memory, and things like abilities and X factors actually do kind of hog a lot of the resources memory-wise. So if that was happening a few years ago, I just can't imagine that it would be able to handle the home field advantage and momentum on top of that. So I don't think that's ever coming to old gen. Basically, anything gameplay related probably isn't going to change going forward on the old consoles. You're going to get features and stuff for the modes, and if they add a new game mode or something like that, you should still get those things, which is kind of how it's always been in the past. If you go back through Madden history, once they went over to the new consoles, the main thing that stops changing is the gameplay, which is honestly really the most important thing about the game, but that's always been where the upgrades truly lie outside of graphics and faster loading times and lighting and things like that. It's always been the gameplay will continue to move forward, and they do new things with it on the new consoles, but the old consoles just kind of keep the same gameplay that the generation ended with. As we throw a crazy pick there. Honestly, that was a really good play by the computer. It's nice to see those plays. You don't see them that often. Somehow he got back to that ball and picked it off. I thought I'd be able to complete that. But anyway, getting back to my point, the gameplay always moves forward on next gen in Madden history. The things that will continue to get updated typically are things for game modes like franchise or ultimate team or career mode, and some of the other little presentation things could get updated. Not all of them, but you might see some of the cosmetics change as well. But when you're talking about graphics and gameplay performance, it's just always historically stayed the same once next gen came out, and this is really just no different. But I'll say, playing this right now, I haven't played old gen Madden for over a year, and it didn't feel that bad. I mean, it definitely is not as good as next gen. I'm not going to sit here and even suggest that it is, but it just didn't feel as bad as I remembered. Right here, we're going to try to dot up with Devontae Adams. I mean, if you're going to put a linebacker on Devontae Adams, you deserve what you get. I understand we're on the goal line, and the computer wants to come out in the goal line defense because they think we're going to run, but, I mean, at least put a safety out there on him. A linebacker just ain't getting it done. But, yeah, I mean, the gameplay didn't feel that bad. I mean, as you see, you know, I even threw a couple picks. I tested the defense. They got the picks. There was the one play where the linebacker actually drifted back and picked me off when it looked like he was going to be open. The main thing that's just really hard to get over once you get used to the new gameplay is just the movement, which is funny because when it initially switched over in Madden 21 to the new movement, everybody, including myself, hated it, and we stayed on current gen. Even though we had next gen consoles, most of us stayed on current gen because it was just such a drastic change and nobody liked it. But last year, you know, most of us were kind of forced to move forward because the game was updating on the new consoles more than the older consoles, especially gameplay wise, and we knew that that was the future direction of the game. So at that point, you kind of just have to suck it up and get used to it. But now that we're used to it, going back to this, the player movement just feels a lot more janky. It just doesn't feel smooth or even close to realistic at all, and now I actually prefer the new movement better as we get a pick to seal the game. But that's just kind of my thoughts on everything. Again, I'm going to drop a comparison later tonight, but for right now, if you want to know more about Madden 23, check out this video right here on the screen.